Hello and welcome to our community service segment. We are going to be talking to an amazing community leader today, Minister April M. LaLand. Did I pronounce your name right?
No,
Please tell me.
it is LaLand.
LaLand. I was going for one of the other two, and I chose to just run with it. All right, but the amazing Minister April M. LaLand is with us, and she is going to be telling us some of the amazing things. She's a multi-hyphenated author, inspirational speaker. She's a minister and an ally to people who are trying to overcome a lot of really huge things in their life. But with all that, I just want to jump right in there. Minister, how are you?
Man, I am so good. I'm blessed, highly favored. I have no complaints.
That is great. It's been a wild year, and the fact that we're still here is enough for me to say that it's a win and that we should celebrate all of our successes. And for those who aren't with us anymore, is to celebrate the respect and stuff of their lives too. So I'm just happy to be here and happy to be interviewing someone amazing like you in the community. So let me just jump right in there. Tell our audience a little about yourself and how you started to help BIPOC and vulnerable populations to overcome physical, mental, and substance abuse.
Well, I am the Minister April LaLand, also known as the Spiritual Soldier. Those of you who follow me on social media and have followed me for a few years now on radio and TV, a lot of people know me as the Spiritual Soldier, but that's a whole other thing. I began doing this type of work almost, I would say maybe 16 years ago. Every major avenue that my organization, my passion, my purpose tries to tackle was once a truth in my life. And so, where we are down the path of fighting domestic violence abuse, I've been there. I survived that twice. Where we are helping people who are homeless, going through crisis, those who are in need of services as far as like rent, utilities, I've been there. And then we also try our best to tackle substance abuse issues right here in South Metro Atlanta and beyond. And I am a recovering addict. I have been clean almost 17 years now, I think it is. So every one of the avenues that we try to tackle as far as our communities that are in crisis came from my life. And I carry that still today. Every single client, even all these years later, our mission is to not only exceed the need that they come to us with, but help them in excellence. I remember how I felt to this day in each one of those situations. And that's what we try to conquer and tackle in those that we help.
Wow. Well, speaking to your personal story, what was the real turning point in your life and how did you reach that turning point?
I think the turning point for me, it depends on which avenue you're talking about. I think
the physical abuse.
The physical abuse.
Yeah.
I don't think that there was one turning point. I don't think that there's one thing that happens in a domestic violence abuse victim's life in their crisis of violence that they say, this is it. I think that there are many, this is it. I think that there are many instances where a victim of abuse understands, accepts, and knows this is wrong. The issue to the path of freedom, to the path of safety, is just that, the path to safety. A lot of times it's not an obstacle within the victim that prevents being free from abuse. It's the obstacle that the abuser puts in place that makes it hard for the victim to leave. So though she may know I need to flee, she may not physically be able to flee. So for me, there was not one instance. I think there were many instances that happened that led to my freedom from domestic violence abuse. Unfortunately, most victims who sustain long-term abuse will end up in another abusive relationship, which is what happened to me. And so in the second instance where I almost lost my life, I pretty much had no choice. There was no going back because I knew if I go back, I'm dead.
Wow. What about substance abuse? How was your experience there?
I always say that, crack was my nemesis.
Hmm.
I really, I was in a 20 plus year crack addiction. People look at me now and they say, oh my God, I can't believe that you were doing that. I tell them I was not a special junkie. I was just like everybody else. Um, there were, again, a series of things that happened. Um, I wish that, I wish that in an addict's life, let me back up.
Yeah.
In my opinion, there is not necessarily a bottom. And this was my issue in trying to get clean with just the 12 steps, because I don't think it's possible to get clean with one remedy. I think that you have to conquer the mind, body, spirit, and soul when you're trying to eradicate addiction. You cannot just go to a 12-step program in a book and just get clean. Some people can, most people can't. You can't just show up at the church and be like, oh my God, yes, Jesus, I'm healed. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. I think that because so many things happen in the midst of addiction that mess with your mind, that mess with your finances, your body, your family, your children, everything, that there are four parts that have to be simultaneously healed and taught a new way to live.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like a progression. I was what they considered a functional addict. I lived as a PTA mom. I worked in a college. I had a great job. I always lived in the suburbs, that type of thing. But then I would go out to poorer neighborhoods and get high. I would go binge addictions. And
Wow.
so in my mind, I'm not like them. I
Mm.
don't do that. I don't live there. And so for a long time, I was a functioning addict until, again, at some point, there's always a progression in addiction. There's always a progression in abuse. It never, ever stays the same. It can't. And
Yeah.
so, I did start getting high at home. I did start doing things that caused problems in my home. I did do things that caused me to lose my children to defects. I did do things that caused me to end up in jail, facing 10 years in prison. I did do things that, caused me to hurt people.
Yeah.
And so there was no one entity that one day I just woke up and say, hey, I'm done. I said I was done probably 2,000 times.
Yeah.
But you get to a place where, either your mind can't handle addiction anymore, your, let's say, your societal self can't handle addiction anymore, because at some point there's nowhere else to go. And so, or you end up in jail,
Yeah.
or like so many people that I got high with, they're not here anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I never believed in a bottom. I believe that addiction is almost like a roller coaster.
Mm.
As you're going up, it's when you're enjoying it. It's great. It's awesome. There's a lot going on. There's momentum. Then you get to the top and you see yourself teeter-tottering, but there's nothing you can do about it. You see the valley coming. You
Yeah.
can't stop it. You just have to go down in it. Some people get in the valley and they never do it again. Some
Yeah.
people don't make it to the valley and they stop. But I don't think there's one issue that makes people stop doing it. And so for me, I think losing my children was a number one issue that I was like, how am I a mom and I don't have my kids?
Yeah. I definitely can relate to that. Two of my best friends from high school became addicted to crack, just after high school, and my sister as well. And I actually had to help my sister through all that by taking custody of her kids permanently. And her losing her children and then losing two more children that she birthed after that were the things that really, like you were saying, there wasn't really a bottom, even though she could see she was in a very low place. And when she would head back towards the mountain and stuff, she wasn't going there intentionally. And it was a lot. It was a lot for her to go through. And I thankfully, didn't have to experience the depths of it with her, but being in with her support system and helping to raise her kids and everything, I definitely saw that side of it, and I saw the things she was going through, and it was very frustrating for her, I feel like, because she she knew where she wanted to go with her future. And she's a very strong person. I would never say she's not a strong person. She's an intelligent person. She's so smart. She's one of the smartest people I've ever known in my whole life.
Can I say this? You know, the misconception of addicts is that we're weak. You know, we're not smart. You know, because we make bad choices, we're not intelligent people. But if you think about it, addicts are actually some of the most intelligent, smart, resourceful people that you will ever meet on the planet, because we have to come up with 1,000,001 ways to keep going in our addictions. I think one of the major problems in recovery is that people try to approach it from a place of judgment. You cannot judge people who are addicts unless you've been there, because we're not monsters, you know, prowling around at night trying to think of ways to rob people and hurt people and, you know, abandon our children and our families. It doesn't work like that. There were many occasions when I was on the way to the dope trap crying my eyes out because I didn't want to go, but I didn't know how not to go. And so when we approach the issue of substance abuse, when we approach at my organization the issue of domestic violence, the one thing we make it is a no judgment zone, because the one thing you cannot do is judge someone in crisis, whether it's abuse, whether it's homelessness, whether it's addiction. Until you walk in somebody else's shoes, don't talk about, you know, the condition of the shoes they're wearing.
Yes.
And I would say the same thing, you know, if we were talking about a cancer patient or someone who had HIV, or, you know, there's many other things, but don't judge someone unless you absolutely know what it is that they're going through.
That makes a lot of sense. And speaking about your organization, can you tell me more about Women to Women and Associates?
It's actually woman to woman.
Woman to woman and Associates.
Yeah. And where that actually came from was how I began even helping people. Even in the midst of my own addiction, you know, I would know about people who needed help, because I would go to those areas, you know, that were different from where I lived at. You know, I knew, okay, I'm going over to Tawana's house, and I know, you know, on the weekend she getting high, the kids ain't got whatever. I would have like little bags at the door for people that I would find out that needed things. And I would take a piece of masking tape and put the person's name on it. So whenever I left, or when I was going to the store or whatever I was doing, I could drop it off. And that's kind of how it started. And then people started hearing about me helping people. And so people started calling me saying, hey, you know, well, I'm getting ready to go to the grocery store. Hey, I got a bonus this week. Can I pick up something for the people you helping? I cleaned out my closet. You want such and such? And so, you know, even again, in my active addiction days, I always had so much child at my house. You know, I was that house that, you know, always fed everybody, had all the
my
kids.
Sister too.
So when I went on my sobriety journey, you know, because I was beginning to get clean, and I was beginning to deal with a lot of issues from my past. My mother passing away at 8 years old, being molested when I was 9 years old, having my first abortion at 13 years old, getting on drugs at 14 years old. Like, all of these things were almost like I was an empty jar, and there were different colored sands being pushed in this jar, which was my pain. Well, they, you know, once you start packing sand on top of sand, it's really hard to get down to the bottom. So all of these things in my life had piled up. And as I began my road to sobriety, I had to begin dealing with a lot of these things, learning that I had PTSD, learning that I had clinical depression, learning, you know, a new way to think and live. And God could then fill up my jar with positive things and spiritual things and graceful things and empowering things, inspiring things to help other people. Because no longer was my jar full of pain and hurt and rape and molestation. And, you know, it was now empty for God to fill it with the righteous thing. And so as that began to happen, I began to realize that I really did have a servant's heart. Didn't know it. I was always so bitter and so angry, you know, and not knowing why. And so, I wasn't even saved then when all of this came about. And so one year I began to go to church, and I met this guy. His name is Pastor Daniel Fagan. And I don't even remember how I ended up at the church, but I didn't trust church people. Because when I tried to get clean, I went to recovery 12-step programs, and they would put me out of the program because I always, well, if you can see my shirt, I always wanted to talk about Jesus. And then when I went to church, if I testified or told people about myself, I was too thugged out of the street for them. So I really didn't trust church people, but I was sitting in the back of this pew, and here out comes this guy, bald-headed, light-skinned guy. And, he's talking and preaching, and I don't know, it just clicked. And it was almost like, starting my organization was almost like I was a pit bull in the backyard with the muzzle on, and nobody would let me out. And he came and said, "Go be you."
Wow.
I know you're a pit bull, but you ain't gonna bite the right people, almost, if you can understand that. And he just gave me the okay to be me. I didn't have to be like the people in the church, but I was still chosen by God, and I was still anointed, and I was still, graced with this passion and purpose to help women in crisis. And then I didn't have to be like the people in recovery, but I could still show up either in a 12-step program, at a rehab, or on the corner and tell somebody what God did for my life and help them get off drugs. And so that's just kind of how it started. And God told me one day to have this women's conference. I had never had a conference, been to a conference, didn't know what it was, but I started telling people I was going to have a women's conference. And they said, "Well, where are you going to have it at?" And I said, "Well, I don't know yet. When God let me know, I'll tell you." And that just kind of snowballed into the first annual Woman to Woman and Associates Women's Empowerment Experience about 7 years ago. And I met this lady there who basically was very impressed and said, "I am going to help you become a nonprofit." And she basically did everything that could be done to make me a real nonprofit for free. And that's how it all began. I had no education. I did not know how to do any of the things you needed to do for a nonprofit. The only thing I was obedient.
Wow. That's amazing. That is amazing.
I was obedient to what God told me to do, and I did it how he told me to do it, despite what people said, despite what people thought, despite me not looking like anybody else, despite me not operating like any other nonprofit that I had seen or heard about. I just did what God said. And here we are all these years later.
Wow, that's amazing. And so coming from that minister, is that how you were inspired to become a minister yourself as well?
I was, it's funny, you hear the story of how it takes a village to raise a child. And he and I are like two totally, put it this way, he was the child that the village raised. I was the child outside the village, robbing the village while everybody else was helping him. And we just kind of like became best friends. I mean, this guy is, he served in the Marines. He's the Georgia State Patrol, never said a cuss word, never took a drink, smoked, like he's just been saved all his life. And here I am at the total opposite of the spectrum. And this guy saw something in me. He saw what God put in me that I didn't know was really there. And he just told me, "Go be you. Don't worry about what nobody else says. I'm telling you, God has anointed you to do what it is that you do." And so I just took that and I ran with it. And he, I call him my big dog. Big dog. Big ups to Pastor Daniel Fagan of Fresh Bread Christian Ministries, because he gave me the name the Spiritual Soldier. He was like, "April, when you open your mouth, you empower people and you inspire them, no matter how low they have come, that they can make it. They can be free. They can walk away. They can get clean." So, he really pushed me. And I actually didn't even want to be a minister. I really didn't. Because, I'm not always ministerial. I go into some pretty rough situations, and I can't always go in with the collar on. I have to go in with the other collar on.
Yes,
But,
yes.
I do try to live a righteous life, and I try to treat everybody righteously. And so he wanted me to be ordained, and that's what he did. And, I think it was more so for everybody else than it was for me. My dad was there. My dad is still living. And, my father has seen me at the lowest points of my life in prison, cracked out, homeless. He's seen all of that. And for my dad to still be living and be able to watch his daughter preach her first sermon, watch me get ordained as a minister. My father has watched me preach, not really preach, but share my testimony at the Georgia State Capitol 3 times in the last couple of years. He's seen me on TV, radio. I mean, it's a blessing. It's a blessing. So I know that I have a ministry and I try to be real ministerial.
Yeah.
But again, sometimes I am in places that, I have to meet people where their pain is. And sometimes my pastor's collar don't work where I have to go. It doesn't mean that I take off the fact that I'm a minister. It just means you have to meet people where they are sometimes.
Absolutely.
And you can't do that from the pulpit being holy.
Yeah, from true.
You can't do that from the pulpit being holier than thou. You can be holy, but not holier than thou.
Yes. Well, you're also an author, and I've seen your book is out, Memoir from a Glass Rose. Is your next book out yet, Life After the Glass Rose?
No, it's almost done.
Yeah.
I finished with it before the spring, and it should be on bookshelf. It is actually the sequel to Memoir from a Glass Rose. And for those people who are in addiction circles, they know what a glass rose is. A glass rose is actually, a stem that you smoke crack in. And so when you think about it, this is my memoir.
Why don't you tell them the exact, like what the glass rose, you walk into the convenience store, or should we tell people how this works?
I don't think so, but most people probably already know.
You probably know, but if you don't know, now you know.
There's a glass tube that you probably see in every gas station, and you probably never thought what it was, but it's actually the stem that you use to actually smoke crack. And so when I began to write my testimony, my memoir about my life at that point, it came to me that this is me talking from the stem. Not only from the stem of addiction, but from the stem of God's word, from the stem of people's pain, from the stem of the pulpit, from the stem of the altar, from the stem of the street corner. Like, that's where I was at that time. And actually, when I wrote the book, I wasn't saved.
Wow.
But when the book got ready to come out, I had given my life to Christ for real this time, because I've given my life to Christ before. But, it was just, Jesus, if you get me out of this right here, I'm in the back of the police car. Lord, if you get me out of this, I'm going to get to my life. And then when he get me out, I'll be right back at the dope house. Come on now. So this, when it actually got published, I was, when it was getting ready to get published, I was saved. And I had to go back and we had to edit out all the bad words, because it was actually called at first, I think it was called The Diary of a Mad Black Crackhead. That was the first title.
Very direct.
And so when I knew that I had to change it, that's what it became. My memoir, because it was about my life. So now it's Life After the Glass Rose. And this is my life after.
That's just amazing. And so I saw you can get your book right now if you were to go to Amazon, right? I'm going to pull that up real quick and show everybody. So everybody who's watching right now, you can get Memoir from a Glass Rose right now from Amazon. It's $10 in the hard copy, or you can get it with a Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. You can read it right now. And I am pretty excited to read that too. And I want to share that with a few of the people that are in my life as well, because if you've been through addiction, it's going to resonate with you a certain way. But if you haven't, it might resonate with you a different way. But I think both sides of that are really, it's a really great story to, you need to understand these stories. If it's a story that doesn't connect with your life, then you definitely need to read it so you understand what's going on in so many people's lives and families. And if you have went through these things, you might just find a kindred spirit where you can really uplift yourself, or at least find some inspiration And I'm really excited that you have those books out. I also saw that you have your story, Road to Recovery, in When God Makes Lemonade as well, right?
I do. And that was actually like my first paid like story. Like I still have the check that they paid me with from that. That was like the most amazing thing. For me, that was even better than my memoir coming out. I just felt like, oh my God, I'm a paid author for real.
Yeah.
And that story really touches on, I think, the dirtiest part of trying to get clean when I got out of jail. I was facing 10 years in prison for armed robbery. And as I told you before, I don't have a filter. I'm very transparent about my life. I have no guilt or shame about who I was. It made me who I am. So they actually court mandated me to a rehab.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't name the rehab. It's not there anymore, but it was in Decatur, where it's greater in the deck. And it had like this chain link fence around it. And like when we would go outside to, read or have free time, the drug dealers would come and throw crack over the fence.
What?
They would pack crack in the shooter and pass them through the fence to us. That's what kind of place it was. And, I had to be real strong to make it out.
That's a
and I had a sponsor at that time. And I actually relapsed with my sponsor. And I left her and went back to rehab. And she lost her life. They found her decapitated behind a dumpster about a week and a half or so later. So, Life After the Glass Rose, when it comes out, has a lot of those stories in it, of me surviving so many situations. And thank God that I did, because my life has been one of service through my organization, me traveling the country, empowering women to grow forward with the purpose. I don't care where you are, if you're a prostitute, if you're a drug addict, if you're a mom that's lost her children, it doesn't matter. You cannot fall far enough that God cannot reach you. And God will always send you that light at the end of the tunnel, whether it be a light from him or a light from a soldier like me to say, hey, I'm nobody special. But if God could do it for me, he could do it for you too. And I know that my book has also helped a lot of family and friends of people who are addicts, because I'm very raw in the book about how I felt getting high, how I felt losing my children, how I still went back out even though I lost my kids. And so it helps them to understand the mind of an addict, because a lot of times family members hurt more than we do.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand, how come my love wasn't enough? How come my help wasn't enough? How can you do this? I know you. You're my husband, wife, cousin, sister, daughter, friend. I know you are a smart person. You're an intelligent person. I know you're in your right mind. How can you let this little thing? So it kind of helps people to understand the mind of an addict.
Yeah, well, that hits real home. So speaking to that, you were talking about, living and spiritually sober. What does that mean for you? Living spiritually sober, LSS.
Wow. Living spiritually sober is like the greatest gift ever, I think, that God gave me, because it allows me to be sober, but I can still be saved. I can still be a spiritual individual. And still, I don't have to live the same grimy addiction life, because a lot of times you take the drugs out, but the person that had to survive in the streets, survive in homelessness, survive in prostitution, survive in drug trafficking is still there. And so this is a place where we can live sober, but be spiritual at the same time. I didn't say holy.
Yeah.
I said spiritual, because for me, there's a difference, because something that's holy is pure. But when you're spiritual, it allows you to still be flawed and trust God. I'm flawed, but I'm obedient to God. I'm flawed, but I'm anointed and I'm walking in God's purpose for my life. And for me, there's a difference. When you're dealing with people who have crisis, who have shame and guilt, who've gone back to their abuser 7 times, who have relapsed 20 times, and nobody else wants to be bothered with them, you can't come at them with the collar on with the holier than thou attitude. that's not going to get it. Again, you have to connect with people where their pain is. Some people's pain is here. Some people's pain is here. Some people's pain is so bad you can't see it. And so you can't approach everybody the same. And that's why living spiritually sober allows me to encompass a great multitude of people right where they are. Now, everybody might rise and get to the same place, but not everybody, starts in the same area.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. That's really powerful. I like that. I like that concept, living spiritually sober. So if someone's watching or listening to this right now and they or someone they know needs help, what was the first direction that you give them for finding resources in kind of a broad way? Because we have a pretty wide nationwide audience. But in a general way, what would you suggest to people, local or non-local, if they or someone they know needs help?
Me, myself, I personally always direct somebody medically. Even in our organization, if we're going to take you on as a client, you have to go seek treatment, which is at Peachford, Anchor, which is here in Atlanta, some of those places that can medically detox you. Medically grounded detox is always 1,000,000% the way to go. Don't care who you are, because anytime you produce a mind and mood altering substance into your body, what happens is it gets up into your brain and it mixes with your unique chemical in your brain and it makes a drug. It's about this long, but everybody's is different.
Wow.
And so you have to be safe when you're trying to get clean, because doing it the wrong way, you can hurt yourself mentally, you can hurt yourself emotionally, and you can't come back from that. And so I would suggest that anybody seek treatment from a medically produced, grounded, facility like a Peachford Hospital here in Atlanta that deals with specifically mental issues and detox. If you're in another state, city from ours, call your local hospital. Hospitals now are equipped and ready to deal with addiction in many different ways. And that can be your starting point to get you to the right place to detox medically. But for me, that's the best bet.
That is great advice.
That way you are safe. Your body can come off of these drugs safely. And then from there, they can get you, like every hospital has a social worker nowadays that can point you in the right direction to the recovery that is best suited for what your addiction is.
Yeah. Wow. That's great advice. So if everybody is listening to that, heed that advice. If you know someone or yourself are looking for help, then, there are resources out there. And I would definitely say this. I would say in the past 20 years, things have improved quite a bit from some of the things that me and my friends had to deal with coming out of the late 90s into the early 2000s. There was a lot of trepidation with medical institutions from what I dealt with. And even me trying to reach out for my friends, be like, hey, I know this person needs help. They're like, well, they probably were going to end up in jail. That's what most people would tell you.
Basically, you're going to jail, or they slap you in the mental ward.
True.
And that's putting you in the rubber room, butt naked, with a hole in the floor. That is not helping anybody. So today, again, you can walk into any hospital. I'm like 99.9% sure you can walk into any hospital and say, hey, I've been out getting high. I've been up for 4 days straight. I'm afraid, my mind's going, and they're gonna put you in the hospital. They're gonna monitor you, do what they need to do for you medically, and then they're gonna give you the information you need to move on to get you some help in recovery.
That's amazing. Well, Minister, is there anything else you'd like our audience to know?
I think I want everyone to take away from today is that, God saved my life for a reason, but I'm nobody special.
Yeah.
God gave everybody a purpose in this life. We all have seeds and gifts planted in our spirit that God means to grow, not for just us, but for us to be servants to one another. And I would encourage everybody, if you don't have a relationship with God, get one. If you had a relationship with God, but you slipped up, slip back in. You know, there's nothing that you can do. God judges, but he's not going to judge you in that way. God is always waiting with his arms open wide, saying, come on, I'm waiting on you. And so if you're looking for some way to fulfill your life, make your life better, make your life have more meaning, ask God what your purpose is today. Because had I not sought God, had I not said, okay, Lord, what is my purpose? You saved my life. How many times from domestic violence abuse? I've been cracked over the face with an aluminum baseball bat, and I'm still here. I've been shot at, I don't know how many times. I'm still here. I've been stabbed. I'm still here. Been hit by a car. I'm still here. You know, I've been in just about every kind of situation you could be in, whether I was on drugs, selling drugs, using drugs, whatever. If I had not been for God, where would I be? And I'm saying all of that to say our lives are not our own. And so there are people who are waiting for you to step into your purpose today. They can't get what they need from God until you do what it is that God has purposed you to do. Had I not done what I did, think about the thousands of people that my life would not have impacted in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And I don't say that arrogantly. We feed a lot of people here in Atlanta. We clothe a lot of people here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I've counseled a lot of people here in Atlanta and beyond. Had I not done that, what could have happened to them? And so in the same way that God planted those things in me, I know that he has planted those things in you and even in you, Jeremiah. Had you not given me this platform today, somebody would not be impacted by my testimony. And so that's what God created us for. Love doesn't always, when God says love your neighbor, it doesn't mean you have to always go out and hug people. You know, I don't like everybody. And I'm a minister.
That's right.
Through the seeds and the gift that God has given me, I'm able to impact people that I will never meet.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So I would just encourage everyone, seek what your purpose is in this life and go for it.
God, that's beautiful. And that transcends everything. Seek your purpose in life. That transcends it all. And thank you so much. And I also want to give a big shout out to our founder and just the man of the hour himself, Vincent Turner, who also set this up. Yeah, Big V is the man. And thank you so much for providing both our platform here with the community service and the minister here with a chance to come together, because those connections, like you were saying, those tiny connections that you may not ever really know about are the things that really make a difference in this world.
I think we need more of it, like now more than ever.
Yeah,
we need it. And so I would just encourage you, Mr. V, keep doing what you're doing, man. Mr. V is he's a soldier. And I would encourage you too, Mr. Jeremiah. You guys keep going what you're doing. Look at what you're doing now. You started this because of football, but look what you impacted today. There's no telling how many people will be touched by what was said today. And so again, God bless you guys. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm grateful, and God bless you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And for everybody who's watching, we've been meeting today with a community leader, Minister April M. LaLand, and she is the author of Memoir from a Glass Rose. And I'm going to pull that up one more time and show you. If you jump over to Amazon, you can buy that book right now. I highly suggest that you jump over there and either get that book in a hard copy or get it on your Kindle Unlimited. It actually it doesn't charge an additional fee to get it on Kindle Unlimited. She also is an amazing person who is the leader of Woman to Woman and Associates. And you can see at the bottom of on our crawl, I've got the website, womantowomanandassociates.net. So please take a look at that, and please let us know in the comments if there's anything else that you'd like to know, any other feedback or for me, or if anything that you'd like to tell the minister. And we super appreciate you coming on, Minister, and joining us for this. It's been an amazing conversation, and you've actually given me some food for thought that
Thank you. And listen, anybody out there, if you need someone to talk to, you need help, you need guidance, you need assistance, you can find me everywhere on social media. All my social media is open. Type in April LaLand. You'll find me either on Woman to Woman platform or my own platform. I answer everybody. I never turn my phone off. Again, I'm a servant. I'm here to serve you. And if you need someone to talk to, don't hesitate to contact me. I'll be there. And just remember, God loves you, so do I. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yes, and that's a great note, and we'll leave you there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please join us again for another community service segment with another great community leader soon. Thank you so much.